consulting companies. From 2002 until 2011, Tom was the president and founder of Armis Partners, LLC. For the preceding 4 years, Tom held the position of director and co-founder of Core Technology Partners. Tom has managed practices in strategic consulting, supply chain management, market data, and trading floor management. Prior to his entrepreneur ventures, Tom held positions with a variety of top-tier financial services firms. Additionally, Tom serves as the vice chairman of the board of Nevins, Inc., a nonprofit and charity serving developmentally challenged adults since 1959. Tom has also been a board member of Nevins since 2011. Tom is married to his wife, Patrice, and they live in Matthews. He has 3 grown daughters living in Washington, D.C. and here in the Queen City. His hobbies include cooking, traveling, hiking, and reading. So everybody, please welcome Tom Gottcent to the Leadership Series. Yay. Yeah, we can do this as Zoom. We can do it's not against the law. And all right. Next up from the Fractional C-Suite as well is Larry Fuscino. I pronounced that correct, right?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. All right. So Larry has 35 plus years experience as a banker, and he's had the chance to work with clients of all sizes, from Fortune 500 companies to nonprofits to even just one-person landscape businesses. So all it sounds like the whole gamut here. And during this time, he has noticed how enterprises of any size or type need the same resources. He's talking about the ability to review operations to be sure that they're efficient, help with payroll, hiring, training, benefits, assistance with liquidity, billing, collections. Everybody needs help with the collections, ensuring and their financial efficiency is maintained. His areas of expertise are in financial management. So obviously, if you're out looking for a CFO, this might be someone to kind of talk to, and specifically being a trusted advisor. And I think that's something that the notion of maybe what differentiates fractional executives from possibly consultants, although consultants do valuable work, is the ongoing notion of a trusted advisor. And so areas that may be affecting your particular firm, whether a nonprofit, public charity, for startup or established firm, things such as cash flow analysis and funding, financial efficiency, risk mitigation. Everybody needs assistance with that. Fraud prevention, particularly in this age of the internet age. I mean, you get particularly if you're in a nonprofit sector and if your donor list gets leaked, that's bad news, right? So that's so those are some things there. So please welcome Larry Fuscino to the Leadership Series.
Rocky, thank you. Good to be here, and thank you for letting Fractional C-Suite have an opportunity to speak.
Awesome. Last but not least, joining us from the Fractional C-Suite is Kathleen Zicari. Kathleen has 25 plus years as an HR advisor and business advisor, and she's worked with clients of all sizes, from Fortune 500s to nonprofits to startup businesses. I think that's an ongoing theme, is that the diversity of types of ventures that fractional executives can apply their skills towards is limitless in many respects. And so again, wherever you are, whether in our audience, whether again you're from the nonprofit sector, the for-profit sector, there is a place, there is an opportunity for that type of consideration. And so during her time in these works, she's has focused mostly on the HR side, so ability to recruit and retain top talent. That's a big thing. Benefits, offerings with company culture, consistent job descriptions, performance review process. I mean, these are things that perhaps if you had an HR consultant, they come in, they tell you, well, this is wrong, this file isn't here, and you need to move the medical out of the personnel because you get an audit, it's bad news. But then they're gone. That's not
$25,000.
And so,
it's creating an ongoing process of consistency,
absolutely,
and mitigating that risk. Yes.
And so, so as a fractional executive, Kathleen brings expertise in compliance, recruiting, retention, benefits, packaging, consistent performance management, and obviously risk management perspective. So things such as providing HR 101, compliance in a box, performance management process, benefits packaging and review. That's a big deal in the nonprofit sector, from my experience, is that obviously your salaries are at a certain level. And so having a real competitive and strong and sort of thinking outside the box benefits package, maybe include some childcare in that thing, is real key.
There's so many ways you can customize things that people just are not aware of that can really save dollars and recruit good people.
And to all the folks listening, again, we have the chat here, and so please put in your questions in the chat, and when they pop up, we will answer. Because this is, while yes, this is a panel, we want this to be interactive because this is kind of a new thing, and probably the most fundamental thing that many of you might be asking yourself is, well, what are we talking about? What in the world is fractional executive services? What does fractional employment mean? And so I would like to turn to our guest panel and put that out there. And I don't know, Larry, if you want to put your slide up yet, or do you want to go ahead and talk? I mean, the floor is yours now. What is it?
I'd like to first say that Kathleen also has a deep experience in the sales world. So
okay.
That's a very key component of her background.
Oh, thank you, Tom. You're absolutely right. I'm one of those odd birds that actually have done both for many, many years. So yes, 25 plus, but I always joke that I started when I was 14.
Yes.
Math works.
All right. So what is it? What is fractional executive services?
In fact, let me go ahead and bring that up. And
So while Larry's doing that, I'm just going to say I've held the notion for a while now that companies need, maybe there's 5 pillars of excellence, and companies need all kinds of different things. And it's my belief that if you don't possess those things, you should outsource it. And now I believe the time has come where that's going to be more affordable and people can actually do that through fractional executives.
I would agree. First off, let me make sure, is everyone seeing my presentation now?
Yes.
Okay.
I see
And
it.
I know there's about 9 people who are not sharing video. So if you're not seeing this, I understand that Shannon, you said you would be sending a copy of this out to everybody at some point. Very good. Okay. All right. All right. So let me go ahead and continue. And Kathleen and Tom, I want to make sure that you all step in as well. But this is kind of our definition of fractional employment, and it is different from what part-time or what a consultant would be. And Tom, you've talked about this before, especially with the difference in the transfer of knowledge. So let me let you talk about that.
Yeah. So a fractional executive is part of your team. When you are a consultant, you're there to provide solution-based deliverables. And when those deliverables are done, you're gone. And there's no emotional interaction, there's no loyalty, if any exists anyway, but they are part of your team and they're there at your discretion and at your direction. I think that's an important distinction. And I think that employees, and one of our goals, of course, is that now the employers can utilize fractional executives to get senior level executive presence and expertise that they couldn't afford before.
So Tom, I see the term fractional employment. If I'm a business, am I adding a new employee, even though you're part of my team? Am I adding like benefits and salary? If I got over 50 employees, am I covered by ACA with this person?
No, as a matter of fact, Larry has a slide here that shows how the model works, and he'll get to that a little later. But just to kind of jump ahead on that, is that we would act as contractors to that person. We'd be a 1099.
Okay, so as if I am a potential employer, well, I'm not a potential employer, I am an employer, it's like I'm a business. So I don't need to worry about because I like the idea of having someone on my team. I like the idea that I have somebody who I don't have to pay, salary and fringes and worry about payroll tax and things of that nature. So that does sound like a point for a fractional executive. Now, one of the things is that I think we talked about in the beginning, and it's maybe an opportunity to kind of differentiate is, so say for instance, I'm in a startup company, and I know one of the most popular things for startup companies to do is to hire on a startup consultant, bring on somebody to consult with them, because I had this wacky idea to make widgets, and here I am. We're selling a lot more widgets than I know how to handle. And now someone tells me I need to go get not a fractional consultant, a startup consultant. What would you tell that startup venture? What is the difference between a startup consultant and what the fractional C-suite or other vendors of fractional executives are?
I would say that your startup consultant is someone who's guiding you through the steps of what you need next, whereas fractional executives are bringing a specific expertise to address what you need. So for instance, the concept of fractional CFO has been around for a long time.
Okay.
Larry happens to have that skill set. And if your startup consultant is advising you that you need financial help, you turn to somebody like Larry.
And Rocky, what I would tell you is in the startup that I'm working with now, that was truly what they needed. They had an idea of opening some data centers, but didn't really have any idea of how to handle the pricing, what they expected their expenses to be. And so a big part of my job was to do the research for them and build a spreadsheet and a model that identified, depending on how many data centers that they opened, how many racks of servers they had, the kind of pricing, what to expect from a revenue and expense point of view, at what point they'd break even. And we did a lot of different modeling there so that the people who were actually running this company had an idea of what to expect from the financials. And that's really been a lot of what's happened. But interestingly, as I've interacted with these two owners, they've needed help with finding. Initially, they wanted to borrow the money, and I pointed out that was something that was going to push the break even out for several years, and it would probably be better to get an investor. And then I helped them try to find investors, helped with some of the negotiations on the investors, and then also pointed out over time, since I've had experience with dealing with a lot of larger companies, some of the ways they were interacting with others from a business point of view wasn't necessarily effective. And so there's also been that kind of transfer of knowledge. So they had a better idea of how to deal with investors, how to deal with some of the attorneys they were using. In fact, identifying the fact that some of the attorneys they had in the past didn't have the kind of expertise they needed. So it's been more than just financial. It's really, I think, helped them get to a point that maybe they would have gotten to anyway, but it took a lot shorter time to get, much less time. Yeah, thanks.
And I can speak to that also just very quickly in that, your number one asset in the growth of your business and in a startup, your number one asset and your number one liability out of the gate are your employees. So who you bring in, how you recruit and retain the right people. Most small to mid-sized businesses think that they're they don't have to worry about a lot of labor laws. You could have one employee and you could still get sued for not hiring that person. EEOC has no limits. So there's certain things like FMLA that do, but what I have found with startups, and I would say about 40% of my business has been startups, in just developing a foundational structure of mitigating those risks. Not a calculus equation, but here it is. This is what needs to be in writing. This is what your performance review looks like. And then strategically moving forward, how are we going to be able to recruit that top talent that you need to go from here to here? So they all blend together, and that's why we work so well together.
I think that what I'm pulling the common thread, because obviously Tom is on operations, and Kathleen, you're in the human resources, and Larry is in finance. But even from your bios and everything, the common thread is that, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about maybe what drove you into fractional services, but a lot of experience. I think all of you have, I have multiple years of experience in being executives already. So I think there's already kind of it almost sounds like, like if I'm a big sports fan, and, a lot of times, there might be a new coach that is very young, but they surround themselves with assistant coaches who have been head coaches before. This is a kind of the difference that I see as versus maybe is that you're bringing on, you're paying the value is this experience, because all of you have seen, it sounds like from what I've heard, you've seen all of these other scenarios and either types of employees or types of financial types of processes before. Is not your first rodeo, I think, is probably the best. And you're bringing that kind of experience that moves beyond a consultant, but isn't quite a full-time employee, right? And I think that is, I think what I've always seen is sort of, and when I was the CEO of a nonprofit, what was, attractive was getting the experience of a CPA, CFO, because in a nonprofit sector, it's hard to have a competitive, salary base for a true CFO, someone who can, like, particularly if you're doing federal grants, and can help you manage submit those reports to, the federal grant monitors, and that's where you can get tripped up a lot, in that particular sector. And, and so that was always nice, is that you're not having to, obviously it's great to bring in new talent, and they can do the professional development and all that kind of thing, but particularly in a crisis situation, it's hard to kind of, just say, go to a couple of CPEs and you'll know everything, and then just come back in here and, get us out of hock. And so I do think that from what I'm hearing, because all of you seem very passionate and very well-versed in your particular fields. And I think that, I think that wherever an organization, enterprise, wherever their sort of deficits are, I think those are probably the best areas to look about fitting in somebody with that wealth of experience. Because it sounds like when Larry, and maybe is that it sounds like you were doing more than just what a consultant would do. Even though you're not a full-time employee, you're doing the books, right? But now you're helping them with investment strategy. Now you're helping them, moving the ball forward, acting like a member of their team beyond what a consultant typically does, which is a very defined scope of objectives, because you have that consulting agreement, and it's like, I'll write a report on this and tell you this. And so I think that's a very valuable takeaway. Tell me a little bit about why. I know obviously there's that experience. Tell me a little bit about why all of you wanted to make this shift in your careers towards fractional executive work.
So first, I think we all believe that this is the wave of the future. We think this is the new method of hiring, right? You asked before, is this going to be a startup that's adding somebody new? It's not necessarily so. If you've been in business a couple of years and you had to furlough someone on the C-level because they were making too much money and you weren't having as much money coming in, you may decide, okay, I only want somebody 2 days a week now. We really believe that this is the new normal. This is going to be the way people hire in the future. One of our guests here today told me in a one-on-one that and James Ballou said that the gig economy just got an extra shot in the arm. So, and that's what I believe.
Because of COVID, yes.
Yes.
I mean, I think COVID kind of covers, well, I wouldn't cover me, but, it covers our discourse in many respects. And I think in all fields of business, tough decisions have to be made, have been made, it's not, will continue to be made. And so I think that this notion of can I have that C-suite experience, but I don't have that budget because I don't have the revenue coming in to support said C-suite experience. I think that is, it is definitely, it's kind of, the market has kind of forced the idea of, can we get maximum value for the most efficient kind of cost outlay? So so I did a little bit of research on this topic. Well, obviously it's a topic very of interest to me. And what I kept hearing was the only firms that a fractional executive would be best for is a firm somewhere and it's a pretty wide range, but between the $5 and $50 million range. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Would you work with somebody lower than 5, or is it more than 50, or is that about right? Because many of the folks listening here may very well say, I'm in a business that is lower than 5, or I'm in a business that's higher than 50. Maybe I don't need to talk to these guys. So could maybe get your thoughts on that. Because I have at least 3 different sources. They're on the web, but they're sources that gave me these numbers.
Let me say something real quickly here. My feeling is it really has a lot more to do with the company itself and where it is in its growth objectives, and also the founder or founders. Honestly, we probably all know people who are founder of a business, and that founder knows everything. They're not going to even realize they need help to grow. They may be frustrated that they're at a plateau, but they don't even know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. They're not going to ask for the help. In fact, they're probably not on this call anyway. But there's others who recognize, okay, I'm at a plateau. I need to grow. What am I doing wrong? What else can I do that would improve things? And one example that I had from my experience, and this was prior to becoming a fractional executive, but it also pointed out the importance of it. I was a banker. One of my customers was a small manufacturer. He had an opportunity to introduce his product to the largest retailer in the world. And all he knew was he was really excited about this because this was going to make him millions of dollars. And I pointed out there's going to be a problem because this major retailer has a reputation for grinding down the costs from its suppliers on a annual basis. In other words, he's going to go in that first year, he's going to get everything he wanted. And from that point on, if he's going to stay with that retailer, they are going to continue to push him to decrease his costs. Didn't believe me. And he ended up taking bankruptcy about 3 years later. And so it's that sort of thing that made me realize it's important for companies of any size to recognize that if you're going to grow, there's positives and there's negatives, there's traps, and you want to avoid them if you can.
And I just want to second what Larry just said. In my experience, my mentor from many, many years ago, which some people may recognize his name, which is Tom Fasano from Tacks. He was one of the people that hired me at the ripe old age of 22. And, he always preached to me, always surround yourself with people that are more successful in specific areas than you are, and you will be successful. And he mentored me for many, many years. And, he started his business with $3,000 and 2 people on that were like his niece and nephew, delivering payrolls in Rochester, New York. And it's now, if you pull it up on NASDAQ, you can see it for all it's worth. But it's, it's things like that where you're confident enough to know it's not necessarily that revenue dollar amount, it's your mindset. It's subject to where are you looking to go, and are you confident enough internally to say, you know what, I want to focus on those widgets and I want to kick it, but I need these different places, or maybe I don't know what I need, but I know I need to do something in order to get off that wheel of just that churn, because I know I can get further and I know I've got the people and the process to do it, but I need strategy and I need help to make that happen. And that's where a fractional executive, based on all of our experience, all the organic experience that we have, that we can really bring in those fresh, outside the box. And this is what other people in your realm have, experienced, because we've been there. And otherwise you don't know what you don't know. So that's where the, business failure rate falls where it falls. And that's one of the primary reasons.
So Rocky, I've heard those same numbers. And I've heard that a company over 50 million is almost a mature organization, right? Sure. They're now going to have or many will have their C-suite in place. Having said that, we have an opportunity ahead of us. If somebody wants us to potentially help him, he just took a job at as a CIO in a $1 billion company. So that opens my eyes to say, okay, there's bigger and there's smaller. We presented yesterday to a group of executives in transition. And one of those people said, I think that your target audience is any firm that's at that tipping point. And the tipping point will be they're just ready to go to the next level. And that could be any price level, right? I mean, so it's wide open. I like that tipping point idea.
So if I'm at if I'm at a budget point, maybe I'm in that single digit area, right? So we were on the 50 area, but maybe I'm a nonprofit, or I'm just a startup that really is. So say for instance, so let's say I'm a startup in that lower end, because not everybody's on, they're working their way up. What are some of the areas, like say for instance, I come to you and I'm a startup venture, or I'm a nonprofit at, sort of, let's say I'm $5 million, budget range, that's where my revenue is. What are some of the those that, as you do your scan of a business of a venture of my particular size and depth, what are some of those sort of value added interjections that a fractional executive could bring in? Maybe, say for instance, let's take it from you as a COO, Tom, Larry as a CFO, and Kathleen as an HR director. I've got this $5 million venture. I'm really wanting to move. I'd love to get more assistance. What's your scan? Like if you come in, what's your scan? What do you tell me? And what would be your sort of proposal of value-added proposal?
So as a COO, my concentration would be to define what your problem is, unless you know what it is, right? And to me, two of the biggest things that you need to address at that level are technology and human resources. Technology is everybody, but finance and human resources. Sorry to misspeak. So therefore, I'm going to ask my partners to answer that.
And that's called and that is the team environment, where we all know what to look for everyone else, because we've been doing this for so long. So we know out of the gate how to holistically bring up certain topics and really get a gauge on, what are those 2 or 3 priorities that are going to take you from here to here. And then let's talk about those B priorities and C priorities moving forward, depending on where you are and what your business is doing. So we can work, we have that camaraderie around us where it's like, okay, I can see it. I got it. This is where we need to start, because no one wants a menu of, oh, you need to do these 50 things.
Right. So I see. So it sounds like, and one of the things that permeates out of this conversation, if we had one of those word charts, or what word comes up the most, you've seen those little pictures, is the word team. And I think that it sounds like from the consumer side, so again, and we see this term bench. I'm going to ask you, I told you I was going to ask you the question about what this means, but I know that in prior of our conversation, Kathleen, you said your mentor told you that you need a team to be surrounded by that have more experience than you. And it's almost kind of, it almost goes back to that analogy about I'm starting a basketball team, or I'm a new coach, and I need to, like Matt Rule, he's the new coach for the Panthers. I'm sure he's surrounding himself with some people who know how special teams are supposed to work,
Exactly. You can't be jack of all trades and master of none.
And so the essential idea is, on one end, on the firm side, you're looking to build the best team, the best leadership, management, C-suite, whatever term you want to use. And you have X amount of resources. We're in a COVID reality where I don't know if I can get everything to market, maybe I'm a nonprofit, will my grants come in here? Everyone's juggling things at a million miles a second in this very extremely changing terrain. but how do I, from if I'm the CEO or or a founder, how do I still surround myself with the best possible team given the terrain? And it also sounds like, from your vantage point, at least with your particular, with your firm, it sounds like, in theory, it sounds like I could import all of you to be on my C-suite. So it would almost be, if I was missing a COO and a CFO and HR director, or I had to let them all go because maybe they were, finances were at a certain area, or I'm at a point where I may have to let one, or something, I could import you guys in to be my team. You could surround me. I could call you at any time. You're not just these consultants. Obviously I don't have the budget, the bandwidth to bring in, FTEs, but I need you at least for maybe at least a day or two, or something. And I guess that's where that term fractional comes in. So I think that's one aspect. So I think there's one is, how do I, as the user, build that team around my nonprofit, around my LLC, around my company, and then on your end, you guys are coming as a team. That's why you guys all showed up together. And I see this term, like you have the slide up here, because in a lot of my research this area, I think one of the selling points is this term bench strength. Now, I'm not like this a business aficionado. I don't have an MBA, and I don't read all the books that I see at Borders sometimes. So I know what bench strength means in sports. So I know that means that you've got the deep team is going to go far in the playoffs, right? That kind of thing. But in a business sense, and I see some terms here, can you explain to our audience what bench strength means, and what does fractional executive services do for a firm's bench strength?
All right, so I'll address that first, and I'll hand it off to Larry and Kathleen. But we literally have an experienced expert in every one of these fields at our disposal. As a matter of fact, we have probably 3 or 4 deep on every one of them. We're looking to go deeper than that, but that's, to me, what bench strength means, that you're going to look at us as a trusted advisor, and you're going to say, I just need someone who provides great customer service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got somebody for you.
Right.
And Larry and Kathleen can take it from there.
What I would say is, bench strength has, to me, a couple of names. And one of them is, if you are the founder and you really don't have a team behind you at all,
right,
you need a team. And initially, someone coming in on a fractional basis to fill out some of these areas is necessary. So you're calling from a third-party bench, let's put it that way. But the other part is, as you grow and you do have a full-time CFO, full-time chief operating officer or something, you also want to build people skills in that same area behind that person, because as you get big enough, there's going to be places where you need more than one operations expert. Or you may lose your COO to somebody else, and you want to have someone who can step right in immediately. So it's bench strength, both in terms of your existing team you're building, but also who do you backfill in case someone has to leave.
Gotcha.
And just to piggyback off of that very quickly, I think what Tom had mentioned with the 2 or 3 deep, what's so great about the 3 of us is that we can evaluate what those 2 or 3 based on whether it's a virtual assistant, whether it could go into a variety of different spaces based on what we identify, because we're used to doing a true needs analysis. It doesn't matter to us. What matters to us is that we're giving you the right tools and resources, and also matching people appropriately. And I think sometimes people are just like, oh, they just go online and they just hire someone. It's like, well, who vetted them? Is the Google review really the Google review? Do you know somebody that knows them? So it becomes this like convoluted puzzle, when in the end you can come to us and we've already vetted these people. We've already figured out that these are the 3 or 4 people that we can throw them down and say, hey, they're accountable to us because we're the ones, but they've been clients of our clients, or they've serviced our clients. So that's how we've organically grown that network. Also from a bench perspective, that comes into my realm as far as the building that bench, as Larry was referring to. If you're in the process of even thinking about buying or selling, most importantly selling, and you don't have bench players that are in line that I can work with to train to be there 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that can take over the reins, if you will, and I don't have the right benefit programs in place to make sure that they stay when I decide I want to retire. That's the other version of a bench.
Yeah, it sounds like you mentioned something about acquiring, because it does sound like some of the areas that, you know, just because you're a startup venture, some folks think that I came up with Amazon, I just started it. Some people in the startup ventures just acquire a business, right? I just got this, I got inheritance and I'm ready to become a something, you know, I'm ready to get in here. It sounds like it, you know, for those people who are thinking of acquiring a business, obviously, the first thing you do before you buy a business, you do due diligence, right? You know, you got to know what you're buying, right? It's like marriage, right? You got to know what you get into, right?
You got to know what kind of, you know, what's in the closet going on. Back, you know, are there lawsuits happening back there? Is everybody going to run from the building when you hire, or when you buy it? Are you going to have a mass exodus of people?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. You know, from the legal perspective, you know, if you have an attorney working with you, you know, they're going to say, well, you need to make sure that title is correct here and that these contracts are in clear. Do you want to keep these people? If what we're going to need to do, but then that's just the due diligence, right? So we're talking in sort of an M&A kind of context, but then now I have it, right? So what if I'm independently wealthy? I got my trust fund, baby. I'm sorry, and I'm showing up, and you know what? People have been making fun of me my entire life, and I had a silver spoon. I'm going to be a business owner, gosh darn it, and I'm going to buy this business. So this would be an opportunity. Like, I don't know what in the world I'm doing with this business now. It would be a good time to reach out to fractional executive.
And just as a side note to that, the beauty of having executive fractional people in your world is that we're bringing in experience, we're bringing in fresh ideas, things that we've heard, things that we've saw, things that we've dealt with, things that we've fixed and consulted to, and now we're taking all of that knowledge and working with you in that small to mid emerging space. And you're getting all of that knowledge, but you're getting it at a fraction of, no pun intended, what you would have gotten if you had tried to, you know, be old school Coca-Cola and buy, you know, and get a $200,000 CFO.
Right.
So that's where we love where we are. That's
before we go into this slide, can you go back to the bench strength slide? I just want to kind of, because I think that this is kind of shows the universe of bench strength, meaning that, so those of you who are there or you're involved with, you know, whether you're like the trust fund baby that I said who's going to start this business because they just are tired of being made fun of and they're going to start this business, or you're in business right now, I still think that notion that Kathleen brought up about her mentor saying, building that team. So you can see right here, it's sort of a laundry list. Now, not all of these will fit your venture, right?
Exactly.
You know, if you know, maybe you're an LLC, you probably don't need a board of directors, right? So you're managed by your partner, your members or such. But this is an interesting one. So in theory, you could have a CEO. So the person, like maybe I'm that trust fund baby, I don't know what I'm doing. I could hire a fractional, I could just hire everyone fractional, from the lawyer to the CFO to the sales to everybody on down the line. It just sounds like it's really, I think it's kind of like, I don't know, when it was transcendental, it's like Thoreau says, know thyself, right? So you have to know yourself, know your firm, know where your strengths are, because maybe there's some people you want to keep. There are people who are really good, but then either people left. And it does sound like, you know, people lateral out of your business faster than they sometimes come in. You know, from an HR perspective, you know, in the nonprofit sector, that's kind of a tough section. The nonprofit was running, we did Head Start. Turnover is incredible among Head Start centers, right? Because, you know, the public school system is always pulling our best teachers because we're just not in a pay range that can, you know, could hit that. And so as you're looking at this bench strength thing, maybe a really helpful idea is to think about, is almost like a dream. Like, I'd love to have, a CIO. Well, now you actually could. And I think one of the things that I find attractive is you could add a Tom, you can add a Larry, you can add a Kathleen, you can even add me. Because I'm holding out as a fractional general counsel to your team.
It's scalable. It's where you are today. And then it's a continuous process of, okay, so that priority's been established. We're in motion. It's not a project based, it's a relationship based. So what else within our environment have we already identified that we need to pull in?
So sometimes it's not going to be them identifying it. It's going to be us identifying it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be saying, okay, listen, we've addressed this issue for you, but we think you can be so much better if you would just add a CFO, do some planning, to do some forecasting, to do whatever, and to advise you on the current value of your company versus if you borrow money, what's your break-even date look like?
Right.
Yep.
So, and speaking of team in that regard, just something that I think is a really added value is like, so where I was for that 2-year period where I was teaching at the law school and come back to practice law, Hull and Chandler, I was in the Head Start world. And one of the things in that area, many nonprofits are trying to acquire Head Start programs through a process called recompetition. You have to apply, but then you have to show to the feds that you have a team, because that's going to be one of the things. Like, well, obviously this group was mismanaging it, so it's up for grabs. If I add a Larry to, I can list you on my application, on my grant application as my CFO, or Kathleen. It's like, who's running your HR? I can add your bio, that amazing bio, all of you, and put that into my grant application and say that, because for all intents and purposes, you are my HR director, correct?
That's right.
Just because I have a fraction of a time, that doesn't mean that what you're doing, you're just getting it done in a much more efficient.
Yeah. I'm just not your W-2 employee. You don't have taxes on me.
You would actually have to hire us first, right?
I'm just not.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but just so you know, you have to hire us first.
Yeah, you got it.
Absolutely. And so I'm glad you got to this slide, because I think we're getting I'll go some time for some questions, but now it's time for brass tacks, right? Because now I'm trust fund baby wants to get in business, or I'm already here.
Okay.
How does this work? Now you got me sold on this. I like the idea of build a team.
Yep.
How does it typically work? How do I engage you? How do I pay? And
Here's how it'll work, Rocky. So our client is the trust fund baby. We'll call him Rocky for now.
Trust me, I wouldn't be here.
So Rocky will ask Fractional C-Suite to help find him an executive in these different roles, because he realizes he needs somebody to help him with certain aspects of that. And we'll say, yep, we can do that. We have a bench of people out there. We'll talk about the rate for pay, and then we'll identify this opportunity to all of our members, all of the executives who are out there on the bench. Let's call them that. Those who are interested for this opportunity, they volunteer for it, and a lot of times they already have some kind of a fractional position, but they have capability for another one. And once they say they're interested, we provide their names and resumes to you, Rocky, and you're going to take a look at this, interview them, hire the one you think that works. And once you do that, then the executive comes on board and starts to work. You would actually pay the negotiated rate to Fractional C-Suite. We are going to take a small percentage from that, and then the rest goes to the executive for their pay, and he'll get a 1099 for that at the end of the year. If you decide this woman is such a great executive, I want to hire her on a full-time basis, not a problem. Part of the agreement over here, though, is going to be that you'll pay us a fee for that. So you'll pay us a fee, a finder's fee, for example. But then that's it. This person is yours. No longer, we don't pay them. You pay them directly. They become a full-time employee. And lastly, from the executives who are on the bench, this is for their interest. They're always free to look for employment outside of what we're doing with Fractional C-Suite. This is just a way for them to find fractional employment if they're interested, or find somebody who may want to hire them on a full-time basis.
So hypothetically, if somebody in our audience is an executive, that is somebody who You know, maybe they are, or maybe you're an audience and you know someone who's a retired exec, or maybe thinking in that age range where I'd like to make, you know, I'd like to make a little extra money, or maybe, or I just want to stay in the game. I just want to keep my tools sharp.
Sure. Yep.
So it sounds like, in addition, so you're with the Fractional C-Suite is that you're kind of like almost like an agency in some respects, but you're also, it's sort of like a cooperative. You're both the workers, but then you're also, you know, the agents as well.
Right.
And so I think that's also a really great takeaway, is that, you know, you're not just trying to sell a service. You can also have people talking about the word team. Yeah, it
Right.
sounds like you are looking for those, like, so if someone is a CIO, because I don't think, you know, that they could come to you and say, hey, could I join your team? And obviously they'd have to, you know, you know, join, you know, like rushing a fraternity. You're gonna have to, you know, it's gonna gotta get on the team and you know, and prove their worth, walk over the hot, no, just kidding, not to walk over the hot, you know, I mean, but I think those are some interesting takeaways as well.
Well, and the point is also with that is that you know, we're looking for that top talent because we want to give that value to our clients.
Mhm.
And we can identify that pretty quickly. And we have a lot of executives that are in that in between state of,
Mhm.
do I want to go back and work for Wells Fargo, or do I want to take my skill set and bring it back to a more fluid environment? And that's, you know,
Get real
people are
again, right?
spectacular.
Yeah, it sounds like, because I know in my first conversation with Larry, you know, I think you one of the more passionate things that you were is like when you're working with a startup, because you're at the sort of, I mean, and no offense to the Fortune 500 types, but you know, you're sort of in this rarefied air and it gets very routine, and sounds like, you know, you got to prepare for a board meeting and you got to, you know, and do your spiel, and
Right.
there's no heart to it, you know, because at the startup level, maybe, or even in the nonprofit sector where grants and everything, it's like it's 100 miles. I mean, it's 100 miles everywhere, but I think that the stakes could be just even a little more critical, and you're asked to do so much more.
Right. It's exciting because you're creating something new, and you're helping someone create something new, and you feel like you are doing something that's more important than just filling out a certain appendix to a certain report that gets given to, you know, a dozen people and they never read it. So.
All right. Well, let's get some questions. I don't know. I can't see whether we have questions in the chat. Shannon, do we have questions in the chat? Or if not, unmute yourself and ask some questions, because this is the time.
We do not currently have questions in the chat, but you have lots of participants, so I'm sure someone has a question.
All right, fire away. We're all here, and we can go over time. I'm not. This is not like some networks don't pull the plug or something. You know?
You don't have a timer on that Zoom?
Well,
Okay.
while we're talking about this, let me talk about one of my examples with a nonprofit.
Okay.
I had been asked to. I'd met the head of a nonprofit here in Charlotte, and just kind of talking with him, and he was interested in what I was doing, but also just felt like he was so busy, he didn't know if there are areas where things should become more efficient. So I had an opportunity to go and visit his operations more than once. And what I found was being busy was not, I mean, that understated it so much. He was so busy that from the time he walked into the office, people were throwing papers at him or asking him to do this. He had questions here and there. He was on the phone all the time, going on visits with donors. And I mean, I literally, he had one of his family members working there. And I told her, I said, you know, I'm worried he's going to have a stroke. And so we took a look at that. We tried to see if there were ways to unload some of the things from him. And in the end, the most important thing I did for him was recommend that he hire a chief operating officer to take the day-to-day stuff off his back so he could do what he was good at, which was bringing in donors. Ultimately, he did that.
It's awesome.
All right, I think we got a question, maybe there's a question or a comment from Christina. Let's see here. Oh, it's a nice comment. Thank you. It just says, this has been very informative. I agree that we see this model more and more in the nonprofit sector. Thank you for your time. Okay, I thought, well, Christina, thank you. And Christina, I'll be seeing you on Friday, because I'll be doing my, she's with the public library. And so if you are interested, I'll be doing my regular Fridays with Rocky at the Zoom call with the public library, Charlotte Mecklenburg Public Library. We'll be talking about the Chetty study and how nonprofits can use community economic development at that one. If that's a, you know, social equity, social mobility is something that you're interested I'm sure that you can find that. I think we put stuff on our LinkedIn about for that as well. Any other questions? I mean, because this is a good time. I mean, if you know, we're definitely here to get some questions. I would just say, definitely, guys, thank you for your time coming on the leadership series. You know, it is definitely, I think the best thing to take away is that there should be food for thought. That things, position, C-suite. First of all, the notion of a C-suite and you know, any of these very vital things. I think even things such as sales, ramping up your sales. You know, I know that James is I did talk to him for a little bit, but had to go to the dentist, so we didn't really get to finish. James, you're out there. Let's finish up that conversation. And you know, because if you're a startup, you know, maybe getting that experience thing in sales and getting that ramped up, or logistics, right? You know, I'm actually making some kind of something. I'm trying to get it out there, you know, and I'm trying to avoid the COVID. You know, now it's a little bit more of a. I mean, there's a lot of different things to think about building your team, and I think ultimately, you know, what we're doing with the leadership series is just giving you some ideas, some leadership ideas that are out there. And I think this really gets to the essence of it, is that team, is that management team that is going to, you know, and you think of that bench strength, and can we take our nonprofit, our startup, our established venture to another level, or just at least maybe in COVID sustain, because maybe that might be maybe that's the W for this year, is just to live, right? It's not
Or pivot.
Or pivot. Absolutely.
That's what I've been working on with all of my clients, is the pivot. Okay, what can we do with the situation that we have?
Mm-hmm.
That's been a huge, but one thing that I would highly encourage everyone to do is a SWOT analysis of their business. Because it just,
Kathleen, what
yes.
what is a SWOT analysis?
Strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats.
One more time, Tom.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Throw down a grid, SWOT, and list your top in each category. Just 2. Don't do more than 2, just 2. And when you do that, everything, it can be as basic. I like to call it the Cliff Notes version. I do a SWOT analysis with and it could be a 30-second conversation, or it could be a 30-minute conversation. So I can determine which one of my partners needs to be brought in.
It's particularly telling when you do 2 of them.
Yes.
The employment team, the management team, and
Yes.
the other the employees.
Yep.
And when you see the very different responses, it's very telling.
Yes. And I do quick climate surveys and things like that. But, you know, it's something that's easy to remember. It's something that's easy to administer to yourself as a business owner, or to possibly your employees, which obviously I would help with, or you can do on your own. It's so basic, but it really gives you that directional theme of where you think your priorities are probably going to fall. But that's what the 3 of us do so well, is identifying those things anyways. And this is just a really good tool for any business to use, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit. Startup, established, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I'd say we do very well is we're a team for a reason, right? We each come with a different bias. We have gray hairs. We have a youngster. No,
There might be one gray hair in there.
Yeah. We have different ideas, and that's a strength, quite frankly.
I think that's the main takeaway. You know, if you're thinking about your team, whatever form that team is, whether it's your management team, whatever you call it, I think this is a great opportunity to maybe, like you said, do that SWOT analysis, fill those gaps. You know, because you know, if you have a weakness and it's like we're missing out on compliance, like we're just getting dinged by the department of something and something every other week, then maybe you need a fractional counsel, fractional compliance, something of that nature for your organization. I think it's just that we're in a new world, and so new thinking has to approach this new world. And while this is an old concept, I think that maybe the financial realities of not having the financial bandwidth to have as many FTEs on your staff, but you don't want to lose that quality. And so I think.
And
that-
I think people are even better off in this scenario because you're getting executives that have such a breadth of
Yeah.
knowledge and experience
It's-
that, you know, anyone really would, again, other than maybe Fortune 500 companies, but then you get stale when you're in those worlds for too long and you're not in that day-to-day world. So, you know, it brings that, you know, the rubber hits the road type mentality of this is what I saw yesterday. This is what I would suggest.
Mhm.
And, you know, being able to give people true advice and
Mhm.
have scalable options associated with it. With my clients, with our clients now, it's every 3 months, there's a performance review on myself.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and then before, and maybe I hope we'll get more questions, but you know, when I was doing sort of my analysis of like, because I know it comes down to cost, right? I think a lot of folks are like, this sounds fantastic. And then they get like the monthly price, right? Because it's usually a flat fee, you know, for that time. But the way I like to recalibrate is particularly if you are, you know, you're setting your budget at whatever firm, my calculations are that typically a fractional executive, probably because of at that flat 1099 rate, is probably about the same as maybe an entry level salaried employee plus fringes and benefits. So if you're going to lose, like, you know, someone who's making, I don't know, 50 base, and then, you know, fringes and benefits on top of that, maybe another 10 or I'm pretty sure at a monthly rate broken up among these folks, it's more than competitive, I would imagine, you know.
Yes.
Yep.
So I think it's just the thinking is that, can I convert this one position that may add value? Obviously, an entry-level program coordinator, you know, person that does your social media or something like that. That's a position that obviously adds value. But if I could convert that to a COO, say what? Are you kidding me? You know, and so these are, again, this is that food for thought that we're putting out there. Anyway, I think, can you flash that slide with your contact information one more time? And anybody who does
Easier said than done.
leadership series, I will shamelessly for all our guests, because that's we do.
Let's see, am I sharing right now?
I'm always advocating, always advocating.
Yeah,
All right, can everyone see it?
I can see Tom.
Oh, that's not it. All right, let's see what's going on here. Why am I not? All right, we'll share screen and here and share. All right, how's that sound? Is that better?
All right. And,
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
and we have this slide available. So I think that if you would like to get the slide, you know, we can email Shannon for that. And this show will be uploaded at the Hull and Chandler Leadership Series YouTube channel page. I think those of you who have signed up, Shannon will send you a link to that as well. Because if you're trying to explain fractional executives and you're like, well, they said this, and one guy kept talking about being a trust fund baby or something, and I don't remember anything else, you can at least pull from, you can go back to the actual episode, fast forward over the guy talking about being a trust fund baby, get to the information that you're looking for. Well, anyway, I hope that we provided you some information and maybe a little bit of entertainment in the middle of the week. And so, on behalf of Hull and Chandler and my other boss, Shannon Hames, I'm Rocky Bagna. I'm signing off. Thank you for joining us today.
thank you, Rocky and Shannon.
Rocky,
Thank you.
thanks very much. And thanks everybody who was on the line.
Appreciate it. Y'all have a good day.
All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Sayonara. I get lunch.